sister's a therapist and I tell jokes. We both want to help all kinds of folks.
Hello, and welcome to My Sister's a Therapist. This is a podcast where I, a comedian, Virginia Jones, and my sister, Laura Ryan, a therapist, talk about whatever it is we want to talk about. Laura, what do you have to say about it?
Well, my name's Laura Ryan. I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist. My sister, Virginia Jones, is a hack comedian.
A storied, legendary comedian.
And we talk a lot more about our family than I had anticipated.
If you pay attention to this podcast, you can get free therapy. There is some in there.
Yes, I've actually gotten that feedback from my clients. They're saying, why are we paying you? You just listen to your podcast for free. You say the same stuff. Virginia, what's our topic this week?
We're talking about stalkers. The Netflix show Baby Reindeer is very much in the zeitgeist. People have been talking a lot about women stalkers and how scary that can be.
What's inspired you this week to talk about stalkers?
I have a little bit of personal inspiration. A little while ago, a person not known to me reached out to tell me a series of things about the person I've been seeing. She got upset with me and she said, well, you called me a stalker. I believe what she said was, you decided I was a stalker. And I said, these are the things that you're doing that stalkers do. Repeatedly initiating contact, sent gifts to people in order to connect with them, tried to initiate contact through third parties, spread rumors, tried to humiliate, harassed friends, family members, or other third parties, taken photos of me surreptitiously.
Yikes.
If this person is listening, I want her to know that this podcast comes from a place of care and curiosity. I really want to know what's going on.
A place of concern. How does it feel to you? Like, what is it? What are you, the stalkee? How does it feel to be observed in this way by a person?
It's incredibly creepy. It feels unsafe. Even though this person, I do not think is any sort of physical threat. All the documentation that I've been reading about stalking says you can't tell.
They always escalate.
So I will say the majority of stalking victims are women. It is estimated that 1 in 3 women will be stalked sometime in their lifetime, but 1 in 6 men, which is quite a few. Have you ever been stalked?
Yes, I was stalked by an ex-boyfriend.
How did that feel? How did you address it?
I personally loved it.
Did it make you feel really cared for?
Yes. And I thought, I really want to get back together with this person. Here, the problem for me with him was that he knew where I lived. He was also stalking my computer. Like he had hacked my computer. So he had access to me. So it was easier. He had more access because we actually, obviously knew each other. But yeah, when we split up, he started calling me all the time and I blocked his number because it was just getting to be too much. And I remember it was like a Halloween night. I was dressed as a peacock. I had come home from a night out and I was petting my cats on the couch as one does. And my phone just would not stop ringing. It was my home phone and my cell phone. It was just like ring, 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 ring. And it was all these numbers and they were all him. He was at a party and he was asking strangers to use their phones so that he could call me.
When someone is calling alternately, and this hasn't happened obviously for a long time, but when someone is alternately calling your landline and your cell phone until you pick up, I actually call that the Laura Ryan special.
I only do it to people I'm related to who I hope want to talk to me.
I have also been stalked by an ex-partner a couple times. The scariest one was he showed up at a comedy show, and it's hard because all my comedy shows are public. They're on a calendar. You can find me. But he showed up at a comedy show and started screaming obscenities and lies about me.
So you were on stage and he's screaming obscenities at you?
Yeah. And screaming about sexual stuff and how the girlfriend he had now was better, like just obscene, and like was texting me obscene stuff. And when I addressed it, like I did block him and then that ended it. But when I addressed it, I said, what is this about? Like, what do you want from me? What is this for? And he said, I just want you to know what you lost. I'm like, yeah, I know. I lost a stalker.
I lost a man who thinks it's okay to verbally abuse me in public.
Right. I've mentioned this before, but in comedy, there is kind of a thin line sometimes between fan and stalker, because if you're coming to a town and you have fans the next town over, you want them to come and pay to see the show and enjoy the show. but there has to be a cutoff to what's reasonable. My cutoff as a non-famous person is 100 miles. If you have come more than 100 miles to see me, that is disturbing. Road comedy does not pay very well. And when I say road comedy, I mean you're going to a roadhouse or a small bar and you're performing comedy often for hundreds of dollars a night, right?
Hundreds of dollars, my word.
I know, it's exciting. You make back your gas money, but there's other benefits to doing it. And for men, one of the benefits has been having sex with randos. Like that's just part of the deal.
That's a benefit?
That's just part of what they're doing it for. They didn't get up and drive 500 miles to Scappoose,
to not have sex with a stranger.
And many comics that I know have like specialized in it, right? When I was freshly divorced, my husband had accused me of cheating on him on the road, and I was aggravated by that.
Rejection much?
Right. So I did have a one night stand with a very cute, completely S-house crazy guy who worked for the Coast Guard. He was in a town maybe 500 miles away from Portland. And he showed up to a show in Portland. And it was the thing where I couldn't place him because it was so far out of context. And he was like, yeah, I came to hang out. Buddy, you shouldn't be here. Yeah, it was creepy. And I did what I've done frequently, which is I sidled up to my headliner and said, I would like to spend time with you and not interact with this person. And thanks a lot, Arch Barker. You were great. I will say this is my first time being stalked by a woman, so I can check that off. And I'm not the primary target. I'm a secondary target.
Life is full of firsts, right?
Life is full of firsts. We just keep learning. Do you think, Laura, you have ever stalked anyone?
Apart from Jack Black, I don't think so.
Right, which you've already admitted on this podcast, so you can't get out of that.
He's my only doc-e at this point. Never say never. There could be more, but yeah. I think at this point,
right
that's
now,
where the line stops.
When I first moved to Portland, when I first came to town, I was interested in a guy, and I was telling my male friend, I'm going to go by his work and see what's up. My friend said to me, well, that's stalking. And I said, no, it isn't. This is just letting him know I'm interested. It gave me pause because it was stalking. It was putting myself in a place where I knew he would be, but I thought it was adorable because one, I'm a woman, and two,
you've watched a lot of rom-coms.
There is a ton of behavior in romantic comedy that is very problematic. Pretty in Pink, a movie we talked about in the Friend Zone episode, Ducky is full on stalking Andy.
100%. He's riding his bike past her house every day.
He's hanging out in front of the club that she goes to.
Yeah.
And it doesn't matter that he loves her or that he's her friend, quote unquote. It's stalking behavior. He's showing up at her work and throwing a fit because she's going on a date with another man. He's a stalker. In Love Actually, the scene that everybody talks about, the cardboard sign guy at Christmas, he's a stalker. He videotaped this woman during her wedding, just a series of creepy close-ups, showed up at her house that she shares with her husband with his creepy message of love. He gets rewarded by a kiss.
Yeah, we're kind of encouraging it, right?
The most talked about scene in Say Anything. And Say Anything, what Lloyd doesn't know, Lloyd Dobler is played by John Cusack, is that his girlfriend does want to get back together with him. She has told him repeatedly to stop contacting her, to stop calling her, and he doesn't. And then he shows up outside her window with a boombox. He is rewarded with a relationship. The next movie hurts my feelings a little bit because I just saw it and it's great. And young Nick Cage is so cute. In Valley Girl, Randy is stalking Julie. Like they go out, they date, and then she decides in a Romeo and Juliet way, her friends say, he's trouble. How are you going to know who to go to prom with if you're dating him? In a montage of adorable happenstances, he pretends to be a theater attendant. He shows up at her prom. He sleeps in the sleeping bag on her lawn, which is maybe the most clear one. Full on stalking.
Oh, wonderful. But he's so cute.
Now, American Beauty, another videotaping one. The weird kid Ricky videotapes his across the street neighbor. Eventually they have sex. To be fair, apart from Baby Reindeer, there's 2 rom-com stalkings I have that women do. Sleepless in Seattle, Meg Ryan hears Tom Hanks' voice on the radio and hires a private investigator to find him and then travels to Seattle.
And it was so romantic.
In Crazy Ex-Girlfriend, the whole show is about a stalker.
She really loves him.
We talked about it before. Messaging that we receive in movies can be harmful because it normalizes. It lets you know that behavior is okay and sometimes even desirable and will be rewarded. In my case, the person that I stalked did wind up going out with me because let's face it, I'm adorable.
Sometimes if men dress in a certain way, they're asking to be stalked.
I do feel like they're asking to be stalked a little bit. Stalking is a crime in all 50 states. Some of the behaviors that make up stalking are criminal, like assault. But even if the individual behaviors are not a crime on its own, like texting, for example, it may be part of a pattern of stalking behavior, and people are encouraged to report it. It's tricky because in Baby Reindeer, when he brings all the emails and texts to the police, they say, well, this isn't anything. And it's until there's a physical assault that he's taken seriously because it's a woman and what could she do?
Well, right. And that's the problem with a lot of this stuff is we have to wait until a crime is committed,
Right.
an actual crime where you could be murdered or assaulted. And until then, people don't really take it seriously. Have you seen the Netflix documentary
called Can I Tell You a Secret?
Well, this gentleman, he never physically stalked anybody, but he did some of the things you were talking about. Like he basically stalked separately. I don't know the exact number, but it was something like 60 women. First, it was women from his little town where he was from, but eventually he started branching out to like influencers because you can access a lot more of their information on the internet. They're showing you where they are. And, he got to the point where he was able to hack her calendar, one of these women's calendars, and mess up her massage appointment. He called her family members and called her boyfriend and said when she was at this rave that we've seen footage of on the internet, she was cheating on you. One woman actually lost her boyfriend because of this. It's really insane.
But also influencers and models and actresses have been killed.
Like my sister Sam that I mentioned in a previous episode.
Women are killed by stalkers all the time, even if they're celebrities. There's a great movie in 1990, Trust, a Hal Hartley movie starring Adrienne Shelley. And you might ask yourself, why didn't she go on to make any more movies? Because she was murdered by a stalker.
So have you seen the show Hacks?
I have.
Well, Jean Smart's character, you might remember, she's a kind of an aging comedian.
Right.
I think she's kind of a Joan Rivers character, right? She's a different generation. She tried to have a talk show. It fell apart. I think it's on some level a reference to her. But anyway, she has a stalker. And this is where my worlds collide because her stalker was from Tenacious D. It was Kyle Gates from Tenacious D. This is when she realizes she's really lost it because her stalker isn't interested in stalking her. He gets out of jail because he's obviously had been arrested for stalking her. She sees him walking away. She's leaving the show and he's walking to his car and she starts chasing him and she's like, hey, what's going on? What did you think of the show? And he was like, it was great. She started stalking her stalker.
Wow, that's really funny. So I got letters from another person who I at first assumed was this stalker, but no, it was a whole other different stalker.
You got all kinds.
An interesting thing about this situation is when he first told me about the situation and said, I've been encouraged to go to the police, I was a real downer about it because I said, I have known so many women in comedy who have been stalked. I know a woman who had to leave Chicago because there was never an assault. Nothing is done about it. Like they can say anything they want. They can text you anything they want. And it's very hard to garner interest, even though this behavior is known to escalate.
Well, yeah, unlike this horrible man from that Netflix documentary, he was constantly harassing these women. He would write them terrible messages. And I think he even was able to access street cameras and stuff. Like he was using technology to stalk so that he would never be physically placed there. But it was pretty insane. Did you hear about the recent stalker? He stalked a woman who was his neighbor. He saw her in the street and asked her out for a date. She said no. And then she carried on with her life. And months later, she went in her apartment and she noticed that there was a brick, like a USB brick that she'd never seen before in her bedroom. And it turned out it had a camera in it. And so she took it to the police and the police recorded this man coming into her bedroom on a very regular basis. And at one point, even ejaculating in her water bottle.
No thanks. And then that's what she sued him on, right?
Yeah, he did go to jail for this.
Yeah.
It's only because they had actual physical footage of this man doing the things.
But a lot of behavior that people think of as romantic, seeing a woman you find attractive and leaving a note on her car, that's kind of stalkery behavior.
Not great.
leaving a woman gifts, the whole concept of a secret admirer, that's a stalker, bro.
In the UK, and Valentine's Day, it's basically the stalker's holiday. You're not supposed to give Valentine's to people that you know or you're in relationships with. It's all supposed to be somebody you don't know. So I remember I got...
What?
Yeah, it's really weird. My boyfriend sent me a card. Hey, I recognized his handwriting. I knew it was him.
So it wasn't a very good...
It wasn't very good,
secret.
But he was sort of like, well, it's supposed to be secret admirer. Ew.
Examine
the
this.
term secret admirer, that's stalker as hell.
Right. Cyrano de Bergerac, is he a stalker?
Yes.
In the great television show 30 Rock, Jenna Maroney is stalked by the great John Hodgman, who was a creepy millionaire.
That's right.
And it's
I think
and having a lot of stalkers it should not be taken as positive affirmation. Like, wow, a lot of guys are leaving a lot of gifts on your car.
Wasn't George Harrison stabbed by a stalker?
Well, and I'll tell you that John Lennon was shot by a stalker, stabbed 40 times in his home.
Yep. He survived it, but a lot of people say that that's kind of when his health...
Being stabbed will have that effect. Andy Warhol was shot by his stalker Valerie Solanas.
From the Society for Cutting Up Men, which I still think is a good title.
Look, there's a lot of good ideas. They're not all bad ideas. And that changed the shape of his career. That was the end of The Factory. That was the end of a lot of his public facing activities.
Well, and I think it also did affect his health. I think
the pneumonia that eventually took him
was connected. It's like that guy who somebody tried to shoot him and they shot into a tree, and then 20 years later, he wants to get rid of the tree because it's dead. So he puts dynamite in it and it blows up and he gets shot and dies. That's the Valerie Solano effect.
That's a real Darwin Award thing, though. Just don't blow up a tree.
Well, I think I think it's kind of commonplace. I think when you can't get at it with a chainsaw, you gotta blow it up.
Many victims of stalking, because of the place that it has in popular culture, struggle with how to respond or try to minimize. That's the comfortable thing to say, well, it really isn't that bad. Some try to reason with their stalkers or placate them. Others may try to threaten the stalker or try to fight back, as it were. I will say that in my experience, none of these things work.
Well, I think it's because most of these folks who are stalkers live in the cluster B.
My question to you is, first question, what is the stalker after? The first thought or idea, this person is seeking a romantic relationship. But if you can't get a romantic relationship, again, the psychologist Alfred Adler says, if you can't get a romantic relationship, you will settle for being feared. A kid goes into a classroom and meets his teacher and wants to set himself apart by being the smartest or the most accomplished, the most talented. And if they're not able to get attention that way, they will frequently become the bad kid.
Right, because any attention is good.
Because they're like, this first tactic didn't work. I'm going to try this other tactic.
In my case with my stalker, basically what it came down to was he showed up at my house. I kept noticing his car was outside of my apartment, which wasn't great. But one day he called me and he said, hey, I'm downstairs outside your apartment and I have something for you, which at that point sent a chill down my spine. I went downstairs. He had a piece of cake from a local bakery. It was in a plastic container. And he said, I know that you like red velvet cake, so I wanted to give you this. Don't send me red velvet cake, folks. I took it from him and I placated him and I went to my apartment and I locked all the doors and I put the red velvet cake in the trash. I don't know.
You don't know. You can't know.
Right.
This person had already done some things that were absolutely out of the ordinary, out of pocket.
Well, when we were dating, he did weird stuff. It just escalated when I broke up with him. So that happened. And then at one point I called crisis hotline and I said, what can I do? What are my rights legally? And she said, I would report it to the police just so that they have it on record. I think I emailed him and said, hey, just like FYI, I don't want to be this person. I don't want to call the police, but I will if you bother me again. And then he never did.
So an interesting thing about my stalking situation is that this person did not have a relationship with the object of their stalking. And he has said, is she really trying to get together with me still? Like, what is this about? And I don't think it is, but I think they want to occupy a space in his world, even if it's a bad space, just like that bad toddler.
Right. It's a power and control move.
I also think that the activity of stalking can be dopamine seeking. Say you're sad and your dopamine plummets and you don't feel like you can do things, you get depressed. A way out of that sometimes is anger, because that pumps up the adrenaline in your body. Like when you're in a fight or flight, you never feel more alive. You feel like you could do anything. And I've definitely been in relationships with people who push that button in order to feel good or feel better. And I also think that the stalker is experiencing that because they will be quiet for a long time and then they will have a bad time or a bad week. And then they will go right back to writing long, rambling emails about everyone who has wronged them and how bad they are. I think it's just a button they're pressing now.
Well, they're cycling, right? I mean, because again, these people, I'm not going to say always, but most of the time, have a mood disorder and have a personality disorder.
Talk more about that. So we've had a whole episode about cluster B personalities. But if I ask you what makes a stalker, what are the components that lead someone to repeated stalking behaviors, what would you say?
I would say narcissism, right? Because it's a sense of entitlement. I'm entitled to you. I'm entitled to your time. I'm entitled to your body. Yeah. And I think it's also sort of a general inability to tolerate negative emotions. And if you look at people in the cluster B, there's kind of a triangle. So in the triangle, you get to occupy the options of savior or perpetrator, and they always have to be the victim. In the stalking scenario, they see themselves as the victim and you're the perpetrator. But what they want is for you to save them.
Oh, wow. Let's get really literal. How would you be saving them in this scenario? Like, what are you, the victim, supposed to do? Or like, what do they think you're going to do?
Well, they want you to be the rescuer. They want you to come in and say, oh, you're right. I never appreciated you for who you were. I was wrong. And you are good and you do have value. And I can't live without you.
And then what should people do? I know we've talked about contacting the police. We have also talked about getting a cease and desist letter. How can someone protect themselves from a stalker or like what are some actions that we can take?
Yeah, I would say, especially with online stalking, lawyer up, because this is a defamation case, right?
Right.
In the situation from that documentary that I watched, like this guy was getting on all kinds of social media, just talking mad stuff about all these women. It was crazy.
Yeah.
And making all of these accusations and just, it was a lot. And, also texting these women personally or sending them Facebook Messenger messages or Instagram messages and just saying terrible things. It's interesting. Much like the cheating episode, I used to think, stalkers, terrible. There's a book that a friend suggested that I read. It's called The Hypnotist's Love Story. It's a fictional book by Liane Moriarty, and it is expertly written. In the story, there's a woman who's a hypnotist. She has a boyfriend, and has a stalker, basically. And so she's developing this relationship, and every time, literally at every turn, this woman is standing in a parking lot or, waiting somewhere, and he's like, "Oh, I can't help you with that." The book is told from the perspective of the hypnotist, and then later it's told by the perspective of the stalker. And so it's a really interesting thought. I'm just going to read you like a passage from it. It sometimes seems so peculiar and so wrong that you could be that intimate with someone, to go to sleep with him and wake up with him, to do really quite extraordinarily personal things together on a regular basis. And then suddenly you don't even know his telephone number or where he's living or working or what he did today or last week or last year. Right? I think that is
That's
very
universal. Yeah,
absolutely. Relatable. I had a lot more empathy for this fictional character. I think with my stalker, I knew that it was, for him, it was coming from a place of loss. I think that he didn't have a very strong social network, and he had come to really rely on me for that. Because I told him, I need space. And I think the rejection was too much. And I think he also has some narcissistic traits going on.
So you mentioned narcissism as being a component of someone who could engage in stalking behavior. I observe it as being specifically covert narcissism. This first person who contacted me had a long list of ways that she'd been wronged and people who'd wronged her, and keeps coming back to this one complaint of like basically rudeness that has escalated to a reason to stalk. And then the second stalker that I had from this incident was actually a friend of an ex-girlfriend who was covert narking it up, like saying, woe is me. Virginia has stolen something from me. So she was complaining so bitterly and so vociferously to this friend of hers that friend took it upon herself to also stalk me. So I've got a real like top 10 list.
You're basically a stalking celeb at this point.
It is weird and it is creepy. I took my Facebook to private for a little while and then I stopped because the person was blocked from me. But of course they have different accounts. And so they were telling me things about my life that I didn't know were public. And even if it's not physically scary, it's emotionally very unsettling.
Right. And that's kind of what these women were saying in this documentary. They were saying, I felt like everywhere I turned, he was there watching me. And I felt like no space was my own, no time was my own. And it was affecting their relationships. There was one instance where this man pretended to be her dad's friend, hit on her and stuff. Like he was doing all kinds of stuff. It was so wild. But let's circle back to, you said that you think it's mostly narcissist. I think when, maybe this is sexist, but I think when it comes to male stalkers, I think it probably is narcissistic personality disorder. And I feel like with maybe lady stalkers, it's more of borderline. Let's return to criteria for borderline. A strong fear of abandonment. This includes going to extreme measures so that you're not separated or rejected, right? Even if the fears are made up. A pattern of unstable, intense relationships, believing someone is perfect one moment and then believing that the person doesn't care enough or is cruel. Quick changes in how you see yourself, including shifting goals and values, as well as seeing yourself as inherently bad or even as if you don't exist. Periods of stress-related paranoia and loss of contact with reality. They can last for a few minutes or up to a few hours. Impulsive, risky behavior, like gambling, unsafe sex, binge eating, drug misuse, waiting in alleys, threats of suicide or self-injury, wide mood swings. It's the cycle. They only last for a few hours to a few days. These mood swings can include periods of being very happy, very irritable or anxious, or feeling shame, ongoing feelings of emptiness, and then again, inappropriate, strong anger, losing your temper often, being sarcastic or bitter, or physically fighting.
A hallmark of a lot of these women has been threats of suicide. That's borderline all the way.
Yeah, that's 100% a borderline trait feature.
Talking about like inappropriate behavior, the very meanest thing this person did was they saw me out with my partner coincidentally, could not have had any sort of information, just happened to be in the same place at the same time. Took a photo of me secretly, which is incredibly creepy, but took a photo of us together and sent it to the woman who is friends with the other stalker, just to be cruel, just to be mean. And I think that when they engage in these bizarre behaviors, it jacks up their dopamine and it helps them be on the up part of the cycle that you're talking about.
Absolutely. Just like we talked about in the other episode, it's an energy vampire. I'm trying to dysregulate people so that I can steal their energy.
And it is dysregulating. Like that's the word exactly. When I receive communication from this person, when I hear about this person calling me out on the internet, which has been happening so much lately, it's really fun. It dysregulates me and it's hard to think clearly about it.
Well, and I think it also sort of sets off these primal instincts of like, I'm not safe.
It feels like a threat, even though there's no evidence that there's any sort of physical threat, but it feels scary.
So you're saying that there's no one who's made a key to your apartment and is going in your apartment and sitting on your bed on a regular basis?
Not at this apartment. So if you feel that you may be a stalker, this is a question that I have for you a lot. If someone is a borderline or feels that they may be a borderline, what can they do? What is the treatment? I know we say, therapy, medication, but that
is the treatment. Therapy and medication. Go to a cognitive behavioral therapist, sit down, try to figure out what is broken in your thinking patterns and how you can repair that.
Yeah.
go do EMDR, work on your trauma history, because we probably know that you have one. Go work on your trauma, figure out why you are engaging in this kind of behavior. What is happening that's making you want to do this?
Because underneath the fear and like the dysregulation and the aggravation of this person, I am concerned about them. Like there is some empathy here because I know
she's not safe for herself or others.
Right. The behavior she's engaging in towards me. And there's a lot of players in this game now. Like we're a club.
It's reminding me of the woman who wrote a complaint about me to my board, and she's a borderline.
So, Laura, what are your final thoughts on this topic of stalking, its causes, its effects, and how to move forward?
Well, number one, I'm sorry that you're scared. And I think this really stinks because you didn't do anything to deserve this. And I don't know what the causes are. I don't know how to prevent it. I feel like legal, intervention seems to be the only real thing that we have on our side. And it's just the whole thing, because again, like the character, the fictional character in that book, that woman was really hurting. Her whole thing was that she had met this man. She'd fallen in love with him. She thought everything was hunky dory. He was a widower. And so he had a daughter. She fell in love with the daughter. I know what that's like.
Right.
And then he just sort of ripped the carpet out from underneath her, and she didn't have a support system. Mm-hmm. And she kind of freaked out. I like to think about that too. We have to have empathy, I think, on some level for these folks because they're going through it. You don't do this if you're not going through it, but you also have to make sure you're safe and you're protected. Virginia, what are your final thoughts?
I think one part of the reason that it's so hard to get legal help or help from the police with stalking is, let's face it, it's something that happens to women twice as often as to men.
Right. And things that are considered women's problems don't really get attention in our society.
Even though a woman is far more likely to be hurt or killed by her stalker than a man, despite George Harrison's experience and also despite Andy Warhol's experience.
And also John Lennon.
And also John Lennon's experience. But in the big picture, I don't just want to know how to help myself and to help my partner. I want to know how to help this person. Because this person is hurting.
Well, and I think also we don't have any guardrails in our society around this stuff. And we need to really work on that.
A little sad and a little scary.
Very unusual. I never have sad episodes for me.
But, something that obviously so many people have dealt with. 1 in 3 of our female listeners statistically has had this experience. 1 in 6 of our male listeners.
I mean, I can think of, off the top of my head, I can think of at least 3 women that I know who've been stalked at some point.
The hypnotist story does remind me of the astronaut who had a relationship with another astronaut. And then, she was married. Until she went to jail, her husband stayed with her. But this guy started a relationship with another woman. And she felt so strongly about it that she got in her car with a plan to kidnap, zip ties, and a lot has been made out of it, but diapers.
That's literally... Everyone talks about the diapers. Like, that's a side note. She just wanted to make good time without having to pull over.
That's just practical.
We've all done it on a long road trip.
But this woman who was, in a very stressful and very demanding line of work, who put in long hours. I think what's interesting to me about it is that she'd been so smart and so accomplished and still said to herself, there's another woman. I have to go kidnap her. Ladies, it's not worth it.
No man is worth that.
So, Laura, this is the part of the show where sometimes you read a review that someone has sent us. Do you have one for us this week? Okay.
So this week we're going to mix it up because we got our very first user text.
Yes, there's a button on Apple Podcasts where you can send text messages to your podcast host, and we got our first one, and that's adorable. And thank you so much.
Yes, thank you so much. This is from Julie from South Carolina. Hi, gals. My name is Julie, and I'm also a therapist. I'm in South Carolina. I love your podcast. I recommend your podcast to clients and friends. I love the realness and honesty you bring to your podcast. Keep doing what you do. Love y'all. Julie, that is heartwarming. I so much appreciate it from a fellow practitioner, a clinician. And I also want to say I would like to write you back, but I can't. But I will respond to people. If you guys want to send us a text, I will respond on air and or via email, maybe. Maybe you can put your email in there and we can email you back.
If you do want to email us, you can do it at hello@mysistersatherapist.com. If you think you would like two very real, down-to-earth personalities to speak about mental health or women's issues at your conference or disco party or Costco grand opening celebration, you can write us at hireus@mysistersatherapist.com. Laura, how can people reach out to you specifically on the internet?
Well, they can go to my website, lauraryan.org. They can also find me on TikTok. I am Laura Ryan. They can follow us on Instagram, my Sister's a Therapist Instagram account. Virginia, how can people reach out to you?
You can find me at my website, www.bedinia.com. I do have a calendar on there. I encourage people to come to a show if they'd like to see a show. I would discourage a stalker if possible.
Please don't come. Please don't look at my calendar if you're a stalker. Thank you.
My Instagram is Bedinia. Most things that say Bedinia on them on the internet have something to do with me. We'd like to thank you for listening. Thank you for your comments. Do write us a review on Apple Podcasts. And we just want to say we love you so much. In closing, we always like to revisit the immortal words of Billy Ray Valentine Capricorn when he said, "We can make it, baby."
Me and you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.